Breaking news, multiple administration sources tell Julia Ainsley, Laura Strickler, and I that the White House is strongly considering Chad Wolf to replace Kevin McAleenan as acting Secretary of Homeland Security. Wolf is currently acting undersecretary at DHS, one of them. Before that, he was Kirstjen Nielsen's chief of staff, where internal emails obtained by NBC News, Wolf was an early architect of the Trump administration's family separation policy. If chosen, Wolf is only expected to hold the position for a short time as the White House finds an official nominee. But senior administration officials worry that there's no one confirmable who actually wants the job. Joining me, the NBC News correspondent covering the DOJ and DHS, also co-byline on this story, Julia Ainsley. Julia, good to have you. First off, who is Chad Wolf?
Well, Katie, as we found in our reporting, he's someone who's actually been with the Department of Homeland Security for a long time. He started there with the TSA right after 9/11. He left to become a lobbyist for 11 years and then came back as Nielsen's chief of staff. That's Kirstjen Nielsen, the former DHS secretary who left in April when the president was upset about those rising border numbers. He's seen as someone, you and I have both found this in talking to sources, he's seen largely as someone who does as he's told, and he's well liked by Stephen Miller, mainly because Miller thinks that he will carry out the hardline immigration policies that he's told to do. But he's not seen as nearly as hardline as someone like Ken Cuccinelli. The problem with Ken Cuccinelli, of course, is that he would not fit those eligibility requirements as required by federal law. So right now, they're zeroing in on Chad Wolf, but I think what our reporting spells out is that don't be fooled when people tell you he's not as hardline as Ken Cuccinelli, because as those emails show, he laid out 16 options for his then boss, Kirstjen Nielsen, to try to curb asylum at the border. And number two was separating family units. That was in December of 2017, before that policy went into effect and later the next summer.
Julia, he was asked about this, about family separation, because he was, chief of staff to Kirstjen Nielsen, during a confirmation hearing, his confirmation hearing back in June for undersecretary. Here's how he defended that role.
As chief of staff and a senior advisor, did you have concerns with that policy? And if so, did you bring those concerns to the secretary at that time?
So my job wasn't to determine whether it was the right or wrong policy. My job at the time was to ensure that the secretary had all the information that she had.
So he's describing himself more as a functionary there, somebody who is not in charge of drafting the policy, making the policy, but just putting it on paper and presenting it to the secretary. His relationship with Stephen Miller, what can we say about that? I was told that they had some communication, at least while Nielsen was secretary, because he was chief of staff, and when Stephen Miller would call Nielsen, he would get Chad Wolf quite a bit. Why do administration officials believe that Miller could potentially have a lot of influence on Wolf?
Well, for a lot of the reasons that we just saw in that display from his confirmation hearing, and I should point out also, Katie, that he was not actually confirmed to that position. He still serves sort of in the role of undersecretary without being Senate confirmed. But as you saw there, he's saying, look, I was just carrying out orders. And that might be precisely who Stephen Miller is looking at for this position, someone who he can influence at DHS while he stays at the White House close to the president's ear, someone who can fulfill his wishes on immigration without pushing the envelope too far, while they're looking for someone else who might be able to be tapped to then go to the Senate for confirmation and fulfill this more full time. He's someone who will do as he's told. But Katie, as you and I have both learned, it's not just about immigration. DHS is a huge agency. Think about our election infrastructure, cybersecurity, airports, the very reason DHS was founded in the wake of 9/11 to combat terrorism, and now with the new threat of domestic terrorism from extreme right-wing groups and white supremacists. This is a big job. It's not just about immigration. But the more we've dug into this, the more it's looking like they are seeing this entire role through the prism of immigration and who will channel Stephen Miller and carry out tough policies that this White House wants on immigration.
One other point I want to make, there is concern about the ability of this administration to find somebody who is confirmable by the Senate, who will actually want this job of Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, because it is such a high-profile and very controversial position. I spoke to Jay Johnson, the former head of DHS, and I just want to read what he said about continuing to put acting members into those roles. He says, I look at current DHS with great...
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.